Hello, I'm Taeha, and today we're going to take a look at the Envoy, Mode's latest 65% keyboard, which I think is a fantastic offering in their lineup that honestly punches above its price point. So I've been using the Mode Envoy for various lengths of time during the past 2 months. I did do an initial impressions and build stream live on my Twitch channel. If you missed it, the VOD is available on the VOD dump channel, Taeha Tapes. But yeah, you can kind of consider this a long-term review since those 2 months have passed. I haven't been using it consistently during those 2 months. There are definitely moments of breaks. I kind of wanted that so I could return to the board and see if I felt differently about it every time I did so. But as you guys know, Mode is a channel sponsor, but they did not influence me to say anything for this review, nor did they get to watch the video in advance. The Mode Envoy starts at $189 US for the base configuration. This can increase up to just about under $300 depending on material and finishes. Ordering with Mode is made extremely easy with their visual configurator that updates in real time as you select your options. Once you selected your keyboard configuration, you can additionally bundle it with Mode's latest line of switches, keycap sets, and stabilizers, which gets you roughly a 35% overall discount, which I would say is actually pretty good value for this hobby at least. One thing to note, you do have to add both the switches and keycap sets at a minimum to take advantage of the bundle discount. Otherwise, you'll be paying full retail price for these add-ons. If you're like me and suffer from decision paralysis oftentimes, or are just a newcomer that's overwhelmed by all the various terminology and components that you have to buy, Mode does offer some pre-configured full keyboard kits, which essentially bundles all the necessary components for a full keyboard build. You do have to still build it, but it takes care of having to make the decisions for you in terms of which components to buy. As of now, early pre-order customers should expect to start receiving their Envoy sometime around July this year, which is not too far off. And let's take a look at what you'll actually be receiving. All Envoys, regardless of whether you purchase any add-ons or not, do come with a carrying case included, which is pretty nice to see. This is pretty common nowadays with most keyboards, but it is always a nice touch when it is included. And the Envoy case is actually pretty compact, but still sturdy enough to handle any kind of protective needs if you do decide to commute or use it for storage. And inside, of course, comes with all the necessary components for the keyboard build, and we'll get to that in a bit. As for the rest of the items on the table, these are all add-ons that you can potentially purchase. Starting with the Mode Envoy foam kit. I personally don't use foam if I can avoid it, but I do believe that foam is here to stay in the hobby, and some people prefer the foam sound signature. So it is nice that it is an option for anyone who does want to build their Envoy with foam. You can also additionally add stabilizers. Mode stabilizers are pretty solid. Any stabilizer really you can mod to be acceptable, and the Mode is no exception. Mode also has introduced 3 switches recently within the past couple months. The Tomorrow Tactiles, which is what I have here. There's also the Anthracite Silent Linears, which are my personal favorite, and the Obscura Linears, which are also extremely solid. But yeah, we have the Tomorrow Tactiles here. And then these I've actually never seen. Looks like this is an artisan keycap for the Tomorrow set. We got a matching Tomorrow theme here, but there are custom artisan keycaps for anyone who's into artisan keycaps. That's really nice. And then we finally have the Mode keycaps. We teased some early prototypes, like singular keycaps on stream, but the entire set is now available for purchase. And everything here is Tomorrow themed, but respectively for if you do go with an Anthracite theme, there is an Anthracite keycap set, there's a Obscura keycap set. I didn't receive desk mats, but desk pads are themed to their respective theme. You can also add on desk mats if you want. Let's take a look at these keycaps. Ooh, these look pretty nice. Now let's actually unbox the Envoy. And the nice thing about this carrying case is that once you open it, ooh, it's compartmentalized. This middle flap here not only serves as a protective barrier against the keyboard underneath, but in each compartment are all the necessary hardware and accessories that you will need to build the board. And then once you're done actually building the board, you can, maybe put a cable in here, business cards, whatever you want, but it's a nice little touch. Up top here, we've got the PCB, which is a requirement, a must, as well as plate or plates if you do end up purchasing multiple plates. And mode also always includes a driver with the necessary bits and a basic switch and keycap puller, which is nice to see. As for the actual keyboard itself, that's on the bottom compartment here. And let's see what this keyboard looks like. The unveiling of the Mode Envoy. This is nice. Since the Mode Sonnet, we've seen a departure in both naming scheme and aesthetics from Mode's initial two keyboards, and I honestly like the new direction Mode is taking. Sonnet and Envoy sound way cooler and more elegant than the 80 and the 65. Some of the visual elements of the Sonnet are definitely present in the Envoy, but the Envoy does have its own unique look, while still remaining true to Mode's brand design. I personally think the Envoy looks great. Usually keyboards in this price range tend to look very plain and simple, but the Envoy has a beautiful accent bar that runs across the back, as well as a pretty striking bottom with a unique design. These dots you see here not only serve as a visual point of interest, but they also serve as the keyboard feet, and I love how they're cleverly hidden and integrated with the bottom weight. What's interesting with the Mode Envoy is their use of these retaining fasteners, which essentially is a screw with a gasket ring. When I first built the Envoy, I initially thought that they behaved the same way as tray mount screws and was ready to be disappointed, but upon closer inspection, these are actually quite different functionally. You see, the mounting system on the Envoy is kind of like a hybrid marriage between a tray mount and a gummy O-ring gasket mount.
All the previous boards, were a combination of stack mount, top mount, or kind of this like dual mounting system. So the 80, the 65, and the Sonnet leading up to it. And, a consistent piece of feedback we got was that people wanted to see us experiment with, new and different mounting styles. And when thinking through like, okay, well, we're the designer on mounting system from scratch, what are some qualities that we like about other boards or things that we want to accentuate or do differently in ours? So one of our references was a gummy O-ring mounting style. The advantages of it are that it's very simple to build, and it offers a very unique kind of like soft typing feel. And I say soft instead of bouncy because a lot of times with like top mount and everything, you have these plates and you're really flexing the plate, right?
Right.
Which is a different feel than kind of compressing an O-ring, which, you know, I would describe as soft versus bouncy. And we definitely like that, but there were some drawbacks to the gummy O-ring, you know, namely in that, you know, depending on how it was implemented, you could be restricted to certain types of stabilizers and the assembly process at times. Like we were using parts in ways that they weren't intended to be used, right? Jamming the O-ring in there and then having the friction case, right? So we wanted to put together something that felt a little more polished, but kind of drew on the aspects that we liked about the gummy O-ring.
On a traditional tray mount keyboard, you usually have anywhere from 2 to 6 mounting posts that stick out from the keyboard on which the PCB sits and is secured to. Tray mount keyboards usually suffer from a stiff and irregular typing experience due to the various points of contact made throughout the interior of the PCB. If you take a look at the Envoy, however, there are no mounting posts. While the retaining fastener is still screwed directly onto the bottom of the case, there is nothing actually contacting the interior of the PCB. Rather, the PCB fixture sits on the lattice blocks, which essentially serve the same purpose that an O-ring does, and the gasket ring on the retaining fasteners are there to prevent the internals from spilling out should you ever flip the keyboard over intentionally, or perhaps, for example, if you commute with the keyboard and take it out of a bag. What this means is that essentially the Mode Envoy achieves a similar typing feel usually associated with gummy O-ring gasket mounted keyboards with the ease of assembly of a tray mount, without having to futz about with fitting an O-ring into a case, which can be somewhat frightening depending on how much friction is involved. Another key aspect that I think is becoming increasingly important, especially in this price range, is ease of assembly. Many keyboards in the sub $200 price point tend to support multiple mounting systems and or configurations that allow the end user to experiment with different typing experiences. Oftentimes, however, this can be a tedious process which involves unscrewing a multitude of screws and having to futz with the internals, which at times can discourage users from playing around with their keyboards. Not with the Mode Envoy. What I appreciate most about the Envoy is just how easy it is to open up the board and change out the lattice blocks to change between a softer or stiffer typing experience. You simply need to take off the keycaps covering the 2 retaining fasteners, unscrew them, and remove the internals, while of course being mindful of the daughter board cable. Disconnect the daughter board cable and now you can swap out the mounting blocks. The Envoy comes with green lattice blocks which allow for a softer and slightly bouncy typing experience, and black solid blocks which, when compared to the lattice blocks, offer a slightly firmer and more responsive typing experience. You can actually go ahead and try squeezing them if you do end up purchasing the Envoy, and you can clearly feel a difference in firmness levels. I personally preferred the typing experience of the lattice blocks, but preferred the acoustics of the solid blocks better. And keep in mind, this is all subjective. This is not to say that one of the mounting blocks is better than the other. But I'm getting old, and these days I've been enjoying a softer, slightly flexy typing experience more than a stiffer one. So that is the perspective that I am coming from. What I can say, however, is that there is definitely a difference between the 2 mounting blocks. In terms of the firmness level, I think even a newcomer to the hobby can differentiate between the 2, but the difference in acoustics is a bit more subtle. The Envoy sounds ever so slightly hollow and more resonant with the lattice blocks, especially with some of the keys closer to the edges of the keyboard, and switching to the solid blocks does tame this a bit more. Even with the lattice blocks, however, I wouldn't say that this board suffers from too hollow a sound signature, but if you do end up using the lattice blocks, it might be in your interest to maybe use some of the foam. The remarkable thing about the Envoy is that I do think a similar typing feel to a high-end gummy O-ring gasket-mounted keyboard, something like the Unicorn, is achieved with the Envoy. I do still prefer the acoustics of the Unicorn better. It just has a tautness that I imagine is attributed due to the fact that an O-ring does provide more gasketing surface area than the lattice blocks, which only contact the edge of the PCB at various points. But it is still impressive that at less than half the price, the Envoy can achieve something that's, I would say, is around 90% close to what the Unicorn provides. My personal Unicorn is built with a FR4 plate, and with the lattice blocks, you actually get a little bit more bounce than what the Unicorn provides, and switching to the solid block gets you somewhat about as firm as the Unicorn. There is a bigger difference in the acoustic department. The Unicorn has a very prominent low-end undertone, which isn't really present in the Envoy at all. But once again, this is subjective as to whether you prefer this or not. MKBHD said this about smartphones several years ago. Cheap phones are getting good, and good phones are getting cheap. With the boom of the hobby since the pandemic, this statement is also starting to apply to keyboards as well. Cheap keyboards are getting great, in fact extremely great this year. Unfortunately, good keyboards haven't really come down in price, but I do believe that this keyboard is an exception. The Mode Envoy is a pretty great keyboard that you can get for a cheap price relative to this hobby. In my opinion, not only did Mode introduce a unique keyboard design, but they also made design choices that make sense and not just for the sake of being different for marketing. There are tons of other keyboards out there that offer, I may even say, too many options nowadays, and oftentimes they end up becoming sort of a jack of all trades, master of none type situation. And usually a handful of these possible configurations are subpar and don't really make the keyboard truly shine. While the Envoy doesn't necessarily have as many knobs and whistles as other keyboards in this price range, the two configurations it does currently offer result in meaningful differences in typing experiences that are both extremely usable, and I honestly appreciate this. And the cool part of the lattice mount is that theoretically, Mode could release feature mounting blocks that offer even more minute fine-tuning of the typing experience. Alright, if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you. I'm gonna try this new segment. Maybe we'll call it Taeha Talks for now, tentatively. But yeah, on stream lately, I've started to share some of my other hobbies. Recently, my love for vinyl and music in general, photography here and there. Yeah, I've kind of been thinking of how to diversify this channel. Keyboards will still be the bread and butter of this channel, but I do want to diversify. As much as I love keyboards and I'm kind of known as the keyboard guy, I am more than just keyboards and I do love other things. So I figured this might be a great way to kind of slowly ease my viewers into it. So yeah, if you guys made it till the end, thank you. Yeah, every Taeha Talks session, I'm planning on responding to comments. Some of the comments, not all of them. So I can start, engaging with my YouTube community, as well as sharing a record. And to kickstart off the series, the first album I would like to share is from a Korean indie band that I've been really into these days called Envoy. Despite them being a Korean band, a lot of their songs are actually in English, so you don't have to necessarily understand Korean. And I would describe their music as very easy to listen to. They're kind of generalized as chill indie electronica music, if I had to say. But I highly recommend checking out their music. Yeah, once again, very easy to listen to, so I think a lot of you guys might like them. I know a lot of my viewers on stream have been liking them, so let's see how the YouTube community likes. I'm not going to share artwork and everything because it'll make the videos too long, but I will have a link to the album down below so you guys can listen along while I respond to some comments, as well as maybe talk about life in the future videos. I obviously can't play the music live on video for copyright reasons, so I'll have a counter so you guys can kind of listen along. So let me go play this record for you guys, and then let me respond to some comments. All right, welcome to Taeha Talks. Let's start by responding to some comments. The first one is from Floor Advertencia. Can I use WD-40 to lube your switches? I've personally never tried. You can probably search Reddit for it. I don't think it's a common thing to lube switches with, but I would just say don't use WD-40. Just get lubes that are better suited for plastics. Next, we have a question from Joffalumsk. Sounds so nice. Also, where did you get your cables from, Mr. T? The cable in that specific video is the Lindy cable from Space Holdings, which ran a couple months ago. But I am also sponsored by Cable Mod. They're one of the best cable vendors in the game at the moment, so I would highly recommend Cable Mod. And another independent cable maker I would like to shout out is Keebstuff, KEEBSTUFF. He's one of the few people doing metal sleeved cables, which I really like. Next, we have a question from Rice Over Wife. Why can't they make a 60 like this? Hiya. I don't speak for Hex. I'm not affiliated with Hex, but you know, a 60% is very common in the hobby. I wouldn't be surprised if that's on the horizon. From Diablo Monk, did you take debate class? It sure sounds like it. You know, I actually never took debate class or studied debate, but I do script a lot for my videos. Most of my videos, especially the reviews and the more evergreen content, like honestly, scripting probably takes the most time in my pipeline. Editing and filming is the quickest by far, but I'm a terrible writer and speaker. I guess I've gotten a lot of practice in due to my job, but yeah, scripting takes so long. I could legit script for weeks on a single video. So I'll take that as a compliment if it sounds like I took a debate class, because that must have mean the script's good. All right, and the last comment we have here is from Bob Wayram. I was a nerd when it used to mean something. Nowadays, everybody's a nerd. That's true. Yeah, back when I was starting off in the hobby, there weren't many keyboard nerds like us. But with the pandemic and some of my videos, as well as other content creators that have blown up, there's a lot more keyboard nerds now. Everybody's a keyboard nerd. But there could still be more of us. The keyboard hobby is still far from being mainstream, so yeah, go evangelize, everyone. All right, that's it for responding to comments. I guess just life updates for this one. In case you guys weren't aware, I did get married. It's been 6 months now. Yeah, half a year since I got married. So that's been pretty fun. I'm an aging old man now. I released merch late last year too. In case you guys missed the merch launch video, please go check that out. If you want to help support the channel, please purchase the merch too. So far, all the reviews have been pretty positive. It is on the more expensive side, but I think the quality is pretty nice, and the brand that I collab with is also pretty well known in the streetwear space. So yeah, please go check it out. Yeah, I guess closing thoughts. Let me ask you guys a question. What kind of content would you guys like to see moving forward? Vinyl, obviously. I'm not a huge audiophile, but vinyl and music is something that I'm into and passionate about. So you can expect a little more of that in the future. Photography as well. I don't know if I'll ever convert fully to a photography channel, but photography, videography is a passion of mine. So those are not completely off the table, but yeah, it can be keyboard content, non-keyboard content. It doesn't even have to be videos per se. It can be other forms like a podcast or, I don't know, prints, books, other merch ideas. Let me know what you guys would like to see this year from me. And to pose another question, it seems like the keyboard hobby is kind of correcting itself post-pandemic. A lot of people are returning back to work. A lot of people are actually starting to be able to receive group buy products and try them out and kind of realize whether the hobby is for them or not. What are your guys' thoughts on kind of this limbo period that the hobby is going through? Do you guys like it? Do you guys dislike it? It's kind of funny. Everyone was complaining how everything was out of stock and unavailable during the boom. Now that things are in stock, a lot of vendors have products readily available and ready to ship. Now a lot of people don't want them anymore. So what are your thoughts? Let me know, and I'll hopefully be able to respond to some comments in the next video. That's it for this Teja Talks. If you have other suggestions for the Teja Talks segment, also let me know down below. But that's it for this video. Until next time, see you nerds.